Now, if you were a member of Tucker Carlson's audience, well, I'm sorry. Know this. He wants you afraid. He wants you afraid of Maxine Waters, of BLM, of Antifa, of anybody who's actually fighting for justice for Black Americans. And in his most mask off moment yet, he's going to explain why. Take a look.
Waters has never believed in Western justice. For decades, she supported the totalitarian government of Cuba, which replaced jury trials with summary mass executions, murdering entire groups of people. And that was fine with Maxine Waters. She's never had a problem with killing political enemies. Waters is now among the most powerful Democrats in Congress. Over the weekend, she traveled to Minneapolis to make certain the mob outside the Chauvin trial understood its marching orders. Do what we say or we'll kill you. That's the message. Maxine Waters doesn't have much use for those Anglo-Saxon civic traditions like jury trials. Her demand was very clear. Convict Officer Derek Chauvin of first-degree murder or we will burn it down.
All right, so there it is. Now, did she, though? Did she? This is some serious absurdity coming from Tucker Carlson. He's literally accusing this woman of calling for the deaths of her political enemies. As I explained in another segment, these two sides, just false equivalence is absolutely ridiculous, as they were talking to two completely different audiences, one which is much more willing to be incited towards violence than the other. Now, this is, it's a pretty insane leap of logic here. Not even Superman could make that leap. You know, tall buildings in a single bound, but can't make that leap that Tucker Carlson just did. But it doesn't matter because Tucker Carlson's audience slurps it right up. Remember, they're mostly old white people who are pretty scared, pretty fearful of the colors. All right. So, of course, it's incredibly easy to scare them. All they have to do is say Antifa or BLM and think that they're some sort of hate group. So, look, there's a ton of protests going on. You got the George Floyd trial, the verdict that's going to be handed down today. And there's a lot of really, really raw feelings, okay, that are happening. The question, of course, is George Floyd going to get some sort of, I can't really call it justice, but will Derek Chauvin be held accountable for the death of George Floyd? And that is the question. And if that does not happen, if George Floyd can't get, justice, I guess, or if Derek Chauvin can't be held accountable for his actions, then will any police officer? Is there any point at all to trust the system? And so that's the question that people out there are going to be asking themselves as they await the hand down of the verdict. And so I get it. Emotions are running hot. But despite that, of course, most of the protests have been peaceful. Yes, there were riots. Of course. Was there looting? Yeah, there was some. Is anyone actually saying that that's a good thing? No, of course not. But here's the thing. Maxine Waters wants a murder conviction. That's totally fine. That's her opinion. I want one too. And a lot of people, guess what? We get to share our opinions. That opinion is not going to sway a jury. I kind of get tired of the whole like, oh, you're influencing the jury. The jury is not filled with 5-year-olds. Okay, they've seen the evidence. It's up to them to make a decision. It's not an easy decision. But I don't think that Maxine Waters did anything wrong by expressing her opinion. Again, she's a congresswoman. She's just a human being. And when you look at what she said, she was not advocating for violence. And again, it's because of the audience that she was speaking to is not going to go out and storm the Minnesota State House. Okay, what she's speaking about is justice, speaking about protests. And yeah, protests are literally confrontational. And so what Tucker Carlson is doing is, again, twisting her words and making her out to be evil. And, of course, using the Anglo-Saxon thing, that's a dog whistle to the far right, who does engage in violence. And they have a pretty large body count, as opposed to the left, which is engaged at worst, tossing cans of soup and tear gas back at cops, and then setting an Arby's on fire. Which actually, by the way, had a stronger reaction that by these right-wing cable pundits than the deaths of actual human beings, which is, of course, the cause of these protests, riots, and things like that in the first place. It's almost as if they care more about property than people. It's super weird. Super weird. But this has been, to me, an incredibly mask-off moment for Tucker Carlson. He's, of course, showing his white nationalism and indifference for the lives of black people more than ever now on his show. It really is super mask-off. Maxine Waters may be far from what we consider to be a progressive, but when it comes to Tucker Carlson, way more progressive than he is by miles, leaps and bounds. Do not go on this guy's show. Do not give him airtime, unless, of course, you are to challenge him, because he's going to use you to really push his white nationalism. There will be no red-brown alliance. Hell no. Because this is who Tucker Carlson really is. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.